Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this special weekend edition and a very, very wet weekend, I must say. Well, first of all, the flood warnings are out and there are so many things that have been cancelled that have been put. But right now, let's get an update on what's happening before we move on with the rest of the news, as this is happening right now. So let's join in with this news broadcast. Yes, we are ready.
Currently have 2 missing persons that we are undertaking searches for, and they are
That message can't be more clearer than that, that if it is flooded, just forget it, but people don't, and they keep running into lots of problems. Thank you very much for that. We've already seen that one. And right now, we will take a look at Gatton, where the roads have been closed off completely and there's lots of debris. Talking about debris, there's a lot of debris floating in Brisbane River right at this point in time. So, boating has been asked to be at a restricted level, but people are still out and about. So please, if you don't need to be even on the river, don't, because there's a piece of big concrete chunk near Hamilton which has broken off from the side of a port, which is dangling in the air. And this morning I just witnessed the city cat and the kitty cat dodge a big chunk of timber floating down the river. And right now I can see the banks rising. The water's rising, and of course I can see out the window there a lot of debris. So this scene here is from Gatton. Water has subsided, but still you can see that still blocked. So as we mentioned, unless it's absolutely necessary, please, stay indoors. And now we know that lots of functions and events, especially the 2 events at Hindu Society of Queensland, which runs the Gayatri Mandir, have been cancelled. The Bal Vikas and the Akhand, the Sundarkand part, which was supposed to be happening tonight, that has been cancelled as well. And we've been informed by Globedent Realty that all of the open houses have been cancelled for today as well, because safety is paramount. So let's all remain safe unless it's absolutely necessary. Don't get out of the road, don't be driving around, and if it is flooded, just forget it. And it is flooded in many areas. So here's the report on many people who have been rescued.
An ocean of water trapping Queenslanders in their homes.
We've got a bag packed and some emergency supplies, and we've got a ladder to the roof if needs be. If we can't get out, we have to get on the roof.
This is the view from Carolyn Clark's house at Kimkin on the Sunshine Coast hinterland, where parts of the region have copped more than 400 millimetres of rain in just 6 hours. It's led to multiple major flooding emergencies across the southeast. At Grantham, west of Brisbane, residents have been told to evacuate.
We have 6 persons sheltering on the roofs of houses. We have dispatched Rescue 500, the helicopter, to assist with that.
The town that was devastated in the deadly 2011 floods is now the scene of another unfolding disaster. Rail cameras show how quickly the water has risen.
A lot of water through there, between Grantham and Placid Hill. The cafe is about half underwater from the photos I've seen, and If you feel the houses, we've probably got water through it.
Jean and Lloyd War rode out the 2011 flood on their roof at Helidon. This time they tried to drive to higher ground but didn't make it, rescued from their stranded car.
We tried to leave our house and vehicle stalled and we're stuck.
Serious fears are also held for residents further north.
With Gympie expected to exceed the major flood level and exceed levels that have not been seen since February of 1999.
Business owners in the CBD are preparing for devastation, shutting shop and clearing out before the forecast inundation arrives.
It appears that the flood might be the biggest we've ever had, so that's quite likely to be, in excess of 18 metres. That will bring it into town for sure.
The might of Mother Nature is not over yet. As night falls and the rain continues, authorities are pleading with Queenslanders to stay vigilant. Alison Horn.
And of course, we keep repeating that message. And of course, there are many tragedies that do happen. There's SES Weka who lost his life. Sound, please.
Desperate indeed, the only refuge, the car roof. Swiftwater crews battled Cooroy's 6 Mile Creek to save a man surrounded by rushing rapids. Carefully, cautiously, and with one last lunge, he found safety.
Young boy's been taken off the top of his car.
Road users have been really mindful of the decisions they make.
For one woman, help never arrived. The 63-year-old was swept away in floodwaters at Belli Park near Monday. This morning, authorities found her submerged car. The body was still inside.
It not only is terrible for the family and friends of the lady that's passed, but it's also difficult for emergency services.
Last night's deluge was unrelenting, hitting the Sunshine Coast and Gympie hardest. Some areas seeing more than 2 months of rain fall in hours.
I think we'll be stuck for days.
Overnight, Mount Wallvi recorded the most, 424 millimetres.
41 millimetres within 15 minutes.
Pomona saw 365 millimetres, Kinki 350.
Even though we did see these really high totals, it was how fast that rainfall was falling, and that's what leads to the flash flooding and those really dangerous or life-threatening conditions.
This morning, 10 people were reported missing. As of this afternoon, all were accounted for except one, a 54-year-old man who was travelling home from work last night at Cedar Pocket when 350 millimetres fell. His motorbike has been located. He's still missing. Authorities are searching on the ground, in the water and from above. To miss something isn't an option. This weather event is so intense, a freight train derailed. It's believed the driver was trapped for 2 hours. At Kinkin, the local watering hole was underwater. The town, now an island in the hinterland. In Cooroy, the water wasn't waist deep, but chest high. Water lapping at Chantel Black's front steps.
The garage and the shed were flooded. Fish pond flooded and we lost all the fish, but luckily it didn't go into the house.
The pet store next door flooded, and this is Danielle Butler's home.
To look outside, there was like a river just outside my door, so it's pretty intense.
In Cooroy, the water went down as quickly as it came up. The break in wet weather giving residents a small window of opportunity to prepare for round 2. At nearby Coran, families were working to clear out what they could from flooded homes after 312 millimetres fell overnight. The Creek family moved in 3 weeks ago. They've lost at least $8,000 worth of property.
Lost a little bit, haven't we?
Yeah, just moved, so everything that we sort of hadn't gotten to as of yet.
North, near Gympie, residents had to be rescued. Tanika Smith swam out to save her dog, but saw her pet goat washed away. She's left with only essentials.
Got some photo albums. My uncle just a few clothes, just honestly pure panic. Whatever we've shoved in there, couldn't even tell you. Not coping is pretty much the answer to that.
Residents now wondering how could it get any worse. But it is set to get worse. Behind me is the Mary River here, and it is rising already at minor flood level, but it's expected to climb by more than a metre overnight. The southeast will have 100 millimetres of widespread falls, in some parts 300 millimetres, and waterways are already swollen.
And still the rain tumbles down. Thanks, Georgie. Let's go to Anna McGraw now, who's in Quran for us tonight. Anna, rescue crews have been kept busy.
Max, the rain came so suddenly and so quickly as well. So many people were caught out. 28 rescues took place north of Brisbane today, including one peculiar mission for firefighters here this morning. But the most incredible tale belongs to a man whose car was washed away and he was left clinging to a tree for hours. Smiling now, but this was Luke Bland last night, stuck and hanging on for dear life.
It was pretty intense.
Luke was on his way home from work when he drove over a hill.
There was water just come out of nowhere. Car door opened a little bit for the light to come on. I could see all the water rushing in. So I eventually just waited for the car to get flooded. Then I pulled out of the car window and then, yeah.
Luke grabbed his phone and held it in his mouth as he swam to a tree. He called 000, then his wife and mum.
A mother's worst nightmare.
But thanks to everybody involved, we have him home.
It took 3 hours for emergency crews to reach him, a testament to how busy they've been. One crew steering this bull back to dry land.
Fairly angry bull, luckily no horns. Part of the assessment is no horns.
The same crew is evacuating Hugo from his home. The 8-year-old has appendicitis.
Since we've lived here for the last 2 years, it hasn't happened that quickly before, so it wasn't really excessive.
There's already been 28 swift water rescues north of Brisbane, and with more rain on the way, crews expect to be busy for days. Residents caught out, then helped out by our heroes on the water. Anna McGraw, 7 News.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you are. That's, as I've mentioned before, that if it is flooded, forget it. Just keep away from those things, as I mentioned. Well, right now, let's take a look at world news and what's happening in Ukraine and what would be Australia's response.
The invasion is a wholesale breach of international law. It is a breach of the UN Charter and the most flagrant violation of sovereignty and territorial integrity that Europe has seen in decades. So the international community is responding, particularly through coordinated sanctions and measures to inflict a cost on those in Russia who bear responsibility or who hold levers of power. I can announce some additional measures as part of the next round of Australian sanctions today. Last night, Minister Birmingham, as Acting Foreign Minister, signed the necessary instruments to put financial sanctions on 8 Russian oligarchs who are close to President Putin and who deserve to bear the economic punishment and cost for Russia's destructive behaviour. And also sanctions on 339 members of the Russian Duma, who are the political facilitators of this action. We will today take steps to sanction key figures in the Belarusian government who are allied with Russia and who are abetting the invasion. The next immediate priority is to continue sanctions on Vladimir Putin's inner circle and on Russia's defence industry. We've seen overnight announcements by the UK, the EU and this morning by Canada that they will sanction Vladimir Putin himself and Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, given the gravity of what they are doing and their key roles. I am seeking advice from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade to enable Australia to take similar steps. It is an exceptional step to sanction leaders, but this is an exceptional situation. We need to be absolutely clear. Vladimir Putin has unparalleled personal power over his country, and he has chosen to go to war against a neighbour that posed no threat to Russia because he wants to reverse history and take away the freedom and the democracy that the Ukrainian people chose for themselves. He will be personally responsible for the deaths and the suffering of innocent Ukrainians. He has lied, he has deceived, he has fabricated, and he has shown no interest in genuine dialogue. It is clear that the only way to exact a cost for those actions is to ensure that he himself shares some of that cost and some of the pain that he is inflicting on everyone else around him in Ukraine. Separately, we are also looking to support Ukraine and its people. Overnight, the Emergency Relief Coordinator Martin Griffiths briefed UN members on the humanitarian situation, and that meeting finished a few hours ago. The humanitarian situation is serious and it is likely to escalate. The UN says that because of the rapidly evolving situation in Ukraine, it remains extremely difficult to assess and to determine the numbers of people in need. And of course those assessment efforts continue to be impacted by the difficult security situation. But we will be ready to provide humanitarian assistance as the situation in Ukraine and in surrounding countries becomes clearer. We have, as you would be aware, committed cyber assistance and the provision of non-lethal military equipment through NATO. And I conclude by saying that Australia has consistently condemned these actions, that we reiterate our calls to stop this violation and we seek the withdrawal of the Russian military and this military action. Thanks.
And that's a right action to be taken at this point in time. Well, let's hear from our Treasurer to see what kind of sanctions would be in place.
Well, he also talked about medical supplies and will be part of a broader NATO effort to do that. But obviously our first line of response has been with respect to the sanctions on Russian banks, on Russian elites and other commercial entities that are benefiting from the regime. So we will be part of a global coordinated effort. We're standing alongside the United States, Greg, the United Kingdom, Japan, Canada and of course European nations who are heavily impacted by this war in Europe.
I might get you to break down some of those financial sanctions which are quite obviously in your direct line of responsibility. But this equipment and the medical supplies, obviously non-lethal means they're not weapons, but they'd be what? Communications equipment, radar signalling, other such devices, and are they donations from the Australian government?
Well, I'm not going to go into the specifics of the type of equipment. Obviously, that will be done in concert with our NATO partners. But in terms of the support, it's, as you say, non-lethal, and we're not sending troops to Ukraine. We've made that very clear. But what we are doing is participating as a part of a broader effort. And of course, there's going to be a significant humanitarian consequence from this conflict, and we're already starting to see the movement of thousands of people trying to avoid the fire and the other consequences of Russia's invasion.
Yeah, so just on that refugee movement so far, 1,000 at least, I think, is the reported number. Does that accord with the government's expectations and planning, and within the envelope of how many might you be expecting to seek visas for Australia?
Well, again, it's too early to say, but we are obviously factoring in that people in the Ukraine may seek to come to Australia. There are already some who have applied for visas and we're seeking to fast-track those. And of course, you've got Ukrainians who are in Australia, non-citizens, who have been given an extended period of time to stay in our country because obviously it's not safe to return. So we're looking at actions on a number of fronts. We're working with our partners, but it's clearly a very dangerous situation right now in Ukraine.
Now, what's the impediment, Treasurer, on this international financial transfer mechanism called SWIFT, interbank funding mechanism? It sounds like Australia, and you can elaborate here, I'm sure, Australia's up for blocking that to Russia, but there doesn't appear to be an international consensus. What's the problem? Can you take us inside why this hasn't actually been applied yet?
Well, SWIFT is the key global payment system, so you use it to settle inter-border, cross-border transactions. So it's very important for banks, for companies, indeed for governments to use such a payment system. Now, action was taken against Iran, and that was taken to great effect where their access to SWIFT was removed. We have said, from Australia's perspective, we would welcome a decision by our international partners to remove Russia from that particular payment system. It would really hurt them and would effectively remove them from the international financial system.
So why hasn't it?
So the financial system and the financial pressure that would be put on them. Well, right now let's go to Ukraine before we, and then we'll finish off with the latest on the floods as to see where we are now as we begin with that, with lots of cancellations of things. Right now we'll go to Ukraine where, all adult males have been banned from leaving the country.
Citizenship is a privilege. So if I'm a citizen of this country, I must do something for this country also.
How are people in your city taking these events? What is the mood like?
Yesterday morning we had huge lines to the ATMs. People tried to withdraw cash. So to 11 a.m. our national bank prohibit to withdraw it. I can use only debit card. Most of credit cards in Ukraine don't work. Also, there is a huge line to every fuel station to the city, plus big lines to every food stores. Other stores don't work.
Okay. What about lines out of the city? Are people trying to leave?
Of course, some people try to leave. That's true. Everyone who has such ability, they do it.
And so,
but not everyone, not really everyone. Yes.
Not everyone. Who do you think is making that decision? Is it mainly women and children who are seeking to leave Ukraine at the moment?
Only, of course, women and children can leave Ukraine. All men from 18 to 60 prohibited to leave the territory of Ukraine.
And how does that make you feel that even if you wanted to leave your country now being invaded by Russia, you're not allowed to?
I'm not allowed, but citizenship is a privilege. So if I'm a citizen of this country, I must do something for this country also. So I understand this prohibition, it's really normal.
Are you prepared to fight if it comes to that?
I can't exclude this also.
Is it something you're thinking about right now?
I don't know how to do it.
How are you doing thinking about the invasion currently underway, the fact that international countries will not be sending troops? They are trying to persuade Russia to withdraw by imposing economic sanctions. Is it enough?
No one knows where the army stops, so after Ukraine, maybe any other country. So if not to stop it right now, the war could be never end and never stop.
What do you think?
So there, ladies and gentlemen, we'll leave that report there. And right now we'll finish off with that press conference on the flood situation here in Queensland. Yep, we're ready to go.
serious weather event today. We encourage everyone to listen to the warnings, to make sensible decisions about being out and about. But of course we also extend condolences to the family and friends of everyone who have been so tragically impacted by this event today. The event is not over though, and for many parts of southeast Queensland, this is the biggest flooding event that they will see for a decade. In some parts of Queensland, southeast Queensland, this is some parts of southeast Queensland, this is the biggest event that they will see in a number of decades. And the rain has not stopped. In fact, there are some parts where it is intensifying, and the impact of that on community could be significant. We already have water catchments which are saturated, which could of course lead to flash flooding and further increases in flooding. There are a number of locations where there are major flood warnings, and we'll hear from the Bureau and others around what people need to be aware of. Can I encourage everyone to exercise extra caution today and tomorrow as we get through this weather event? I need everyone out there to be making sensible decisions, considering where and when they go and planning their journey. Do not drive into floodwaters. Make sure you check on your neighbours and your mates to make sure they're okay too. Please listen to all the warnings and keep informed. Our emergency services, police and other essential workers are out and about doing their bit to keep the community safe. Now I'm asking everyone in South East Queensland to do their bit to keep themselves and others that they know safe as well. We've got a number of people here to speak. We'll hear firstly from the Bureau, then from the State Disaster Coordinator, the Fire Commissioner and the Police Commissioner, and then happy to take some questions about the weather.
Good morning. So it's clear that we're in the middle of what could be a season-defining rain event for southeast Queensland. Areas of heavy rain are continuing across the southeast, and it's likely this activity is now going to continue into Sunday, with the system now moving slower than initially expected. Locally intense falls are continuing around southeast Queensland, with the main focus currently around the Bribie Island and Moreton Bay Regional Council area. Since many catchments are now saturated, and in combination with this rainfall, there is now going to be an increased risk of dangerous and life-threatening flash flooding, and even the potential for localised landslides during the course of this event, given how wet a lot of these catchments are. Numerous major flood warnings are now current across southeast Queensland, and the number and the severity of these flood warnings is only going to increase over the course of this weekend and into early next week, with further rainfall continued. A flood watch also continues for a lot of the remaining catchments across southeast Queensland while this event still is unfolding. Damaging wind gusts also remain possible around the coastline and adjacent inland areas during the course of today and into the course of tomorrow, which of course, in combination with some of these saturated catchments and grounds, may just lead to any shallow-rooted trees falling over. Stepping into more detail into our current flood warnings, we have a major flood warning that's going for parts of the Brisbane River. Significant flash flooding has largely peaked in the Lockyer Valley that occurred last night, but with further forecast rainfall, you can't discount further rapid rises throughout the Lockyer Valley during the course of today and into tomorrow. Major flooding is being recorded in the Brisbane River at Ipswich, and minor flood warnings are expected at the Brisbane City Gauge on the high tide over the course of the weekend. Of course, it's a bit early to tell with further rainfall about where the gauge may go to over the coming days, but we'll definitely keep you updated on this as the event unfolds. A major flood warning is also current for the Mary River, with major flood levels already being recorded at Gympie. These flood levels have already exceeded the events that happened in 2011 and 2013, showing how significant this event is going to be for some places, and in particular for Gympie, which may actually exceed the last known flood event back in 1999. So this is going to exceed an event that hasn't happened in at least 20 to 25 years. Major flooding is also now expected at Maryborough, where the major flood level may peak during the course of Sunday and may actually exceed the peak that was observed earlier this year in January of 2022. We now also have a major flood warning that's going for the Mooloolah, Noosa and Maroochy rivers, and this is expected, given the forecast rain and what has been happening during the course of this morning. We've seen a further 100 to 150 millimetres occur around the Sunshine Coast over the course of this morning. This has been in addition to 200 to 300 millimetre totals that happened during the course of overnight and late yesterday. This is now shaping up to be a very significant rainfall event for the Sunshine Coast area, and one that may not have been seen in the area since at least 1992, That's nearly 30 years since the last time we saw an event of this scale for the Sunshine Coast and for those catchments around the Mooloolah, Noosa and Maroochy rivers. Finally, the last major flood warning that we have currently at the moment is the Logan River, where Beaudesert may reach the major flood level during the course of Saturday morning. Of course, these are just the major flood warnings we have. We also have a range of minor to moderate flood warnings across southeast Queensland right now. And as I mentioned, with further rainfall expected, we can now expect the number of these warnings and the severity of these warnings to increase during the course of this event and while this rainfall is still happening. To close off, I also just wanted to note some of the most significant totals we've had during the course of this event, just to give you a gravity of the scale of the rainfall they're experiencing during this week. In the 21 hours to 6 a.m. this morning, we had 618 millimetres at Mount Morris near Brisbane.
Well, there's two things. One is if you are there, don't go out unless you really, really need to. And number two is, if it is flooded, forget it. So that's the message. And it's coming out very loud and clear. Ladies and gentlemen, as we know, there's been a number of events which have been cancelled for today. All the events at Gayatri Mandir in Boondall, and of course, GlobeNet Realty has reported all the open houses being cancelled. Well, it's quite a responsible thing to do. So unless it's absolutely, absolutely necessary, stay put. Do not leave your house. And if you're driving around, if you have to be out around, and if you see flood water, just forget it. Do not take that risk. And the deaths and everything we've seen is all a result of that, driving into the flooded waters. And people think somehow that they can get through, or they really need to get through. No need could be greater than saving your life. So stay put, stay safe. And be connected. And as I mentioned before, we'll have to watch out for that tide. And looking out the window, I can see the Brisbane River. The edges are rising, so you can see the waters rising there, and a lot of debris floating about. So boating today is not the day for it, so please, stay put. I can still see the city cat and the kitty cat, floating around, and this morning I've just witnessed them, narrowly missing a big tree trunk that was floating down the river. And as you can, as I've mentioned before, I can see a lot of debris floating around in the river as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, whatever you do, please remain safe in this time, and our prayers are for everyone in Ukraine as well. It is a dire situation there as well, and of course, all of these things combined with the pandemic, which is now easing. So, that's a little bit good news on that end. And if the need be, we'll come back with another live segment tomorrow. But until that time, please remain safe and stay indoors as long as you can, and only go out if you really, really have to. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a special presentation of Australian Indian Radio's live segment together with Brisbane Indian Times.